I was jamming a little bit with some family members recently, and I began to ask them how do they think about the music that they're playing, and they were kind of like, what do you mean? And I said, well, specifically, do you think about this step and this step? And they're like, no. And so I began to gently explain to them that if they would just take these two vital steps, it would make some of the things that they're doing so much easier. So in this video, I want to show you what those two vital steps are and some of the things we can begin to do once we've completed those steps. My name is Peter. Thanks for joining me at Our Worship Sound, where we're making worship keyboard technique and technology easier. These two steps are things that I've based so much of my teaching around. So if you've seen my other videos, you won't be surprised to learn that the two vital steps are, one, clearly identifying the key of the song that you're playing, and two, identifying the notes of the scale. These steps are vital for understanding how music works. We're going to use two charts from my free music theory guidebook, and I'll show you how you can locate that in a moment. Now, I promise you I'm not going to lead you down a rabbit hole of a whole bunch of musical theory. I'm just going to unlock some of these most important concepts. To follow along with the steps in this video, you can take any song that you already know or one that you're maybe currently working on. I'm going to use this song, partially because it contains some chords that might scare some people away, but I want to show you with these processes, it can make even something that seems complicated pretty simple. The first step is that we're going to identify the key. And to do that, we're simply going to find where these chords are on this chord reference chart and where they show up. For most songs, all of the chords are going to show up in one row or one key in the chart. So as we look at this, I'm going to plug in my chords E flat, B flat, C minor, and A flat. And as we do that, we find that there's just one row where all of those chords show up, and it's for the key of E flat major. What's more is we're going to take each one of those chords and figure out the number that goes along with that chord in that key. So in E flat, the E flat chord is the 1 chord, and that makes sense. The B flat chord is the 5 chord, C minor is the 6 chord, and A flat is the 4 chord. And the reason why they have those numbers is because each chord is built off a certain note of this scale, which we'll talk about in a moment. But E flat is built on the first note of the E flat scale. B flat is built off the 5th note of the scale. C minor is built off the 6th note of the scale, and A flat is built off the 4th note of the scale. So that's why they have those numbers 1, 5, 6, and 4. This is going to make some things so much easier in the music that you're playing if you could begin to think about the key and how the chords work within that key. For one, it's going to make it easier to play by ear, because as you think about those numbers, you're going to start to hear characteristics of the different chord numbers. You're going to hear how 1 sounds like home. You're going to hear how 5 wants to immediately go somewhere else. You're going to identify the 6 chord because it is minor, and then you're going to identify the 4 chord just because it has a certain feel and it can kind of go this way or kind of go this way. But you're going to begin to listen to music and you're going to hear that sounds like this chord or that chord, and it begins to make it so much easier to play by chords as you can think about the key and how they relate together. Number 2, it can make it so much easier to memorize songs because I'm not thinking, was it this flat and then this flat and then this one and then this flat. I can think of it in terms of I'm going to play the 1 chord, the 5 chord, the 6, and the 4. 1, 5, 6, 4. And it just makes it easier to memorize chord progressions and songs when you have that in place. Number 3, it makes it so much easier to transpose. So say this chord or this key doesn't fit my voice. Maybe I need to play it up a little bit. So, or maybe you're playing for somebody else who needs it a little bit higher. So say instead of an E flat, they want to sing it in the key of G. Well, G is 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps higher, so I can think, well, E flat is going to go to G. That's easy enough. But then I've got B flat, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I need to play a D chord, and then C minor as you begin again. That gets really complicated. And so what a lot of people do instead is they just turn on the transpose function on their keyboard. But then what always happens is you set it wrong, or if you forget that it's there and you go to play in a different key, and it just creates some messes in your playing. So what you want to do is learn how to transpose. It's a lot easier if I can just think in the key of G major, here's the 1 chord, the 5 chord, the 6 chord, the 4 chord. If I need to play it in A flat, there's a 1, 5, 6, 4, A major, 1, 5, 6, 4. It's so much easier once you learn the proper way of thinking about chords to transpose and make that happen. And number 4, identifying the key and thinking about chords this way makes it easy to create your own chord progressions or even write your own songs. So let's say I've got a melody and I know that this E flat chord sounds pretty good. If I know that I'm in the key of E flat, then I already have some other options about what chords might sound good with that. I don't have to guess and try different chords. I already kind of know what's going to work well. So knowing the key, thinking about chords is going to help you do all these skills so much easier. But let's not stop there. Once we know the key, we also want to learn the scale notes. And I'm not talking about both hands playing together, flying up and down the keyboard. I'm talking about just identifying the notes that are in the scale for that key. And even 2 or 3 notes is going to go a long way. So what we want to do is we're going to go back to the music theory guidebook and locate the scale reference chart. To get these charts for yourself, what you can do is go to ourshipsound.com/keyboard. Put in your name and your email address, and then the first thing that you're going to get is something called the Complete Keyboardist, which is another resource that I put together and just ties together all the concepts that I like to teach to help your keyboard playing. And then once that, you just follow a couple more steps, and it's going to lead you to the Music Theory Guidebook, which has these charts that we're looking at in this video. So again, go to ourshipsound.com/keyboard, follow the steps until you reach the Music Theory Guidebook, open that up, and then use these charts for the songs that you're learning. With the scale reference chart in front of us, we're going to look at the E flat major scale. So we just follow the notes: E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to change our chords a little bit and try to make them sound better, knowing a couple of these notes in the scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first scale note and the 5th scale note. So E flat and B flat. And what we're going to try is adding these scale notes, the 1st and the 5th, to any chord in the progression that doesn't already have those notes in it. I'm going to start the chord progression with E flat in this inversion. I've taken the G and B flat and moved them down below the E flat. So E flat here, B flat like this, C minor here, and then A flat. So again, we're going to look to add the 1st and 5th scale notes of the key to any chord that doesn't already have them. E flat has both, so no changes right now. And then B flat has the 5th scale note, but not the 1st. So here's where we get to make a decision. Do we want to play it as what we call a B flat sus4? A lot of chord charts will already have that there. We're going to leave it as it is for right now. Now we're going to start to make a couple of changes. Instead of C minor like this, we've got the E flat, but we could add the B flat. That's a decent option. One thing that I like to do is play nice and clear sounding chords, so I try to leave out any notes that I can from the right hand. Since the left hand is already playing the C, I can leave it out of the right hand and get a nice clear sounding C minor 7, and I don't have to think about whether it's a 7 or what it is. I just know that I'm adding the 5th scale note and it makes it sound good. So instead of this, I'm going to play this. And then for the A flat, it has the E flat but not the B flat. So we can simply add the B flat to it, but then an option that we have on this chord is to leave out the 3rd. And so this is getting a little bit down the road, but we can add the B flat, which is the 2nd above the root here, and we can leave out the 3rd. This is called an A flat 2 chord. So again, we can just get there by adding the 5th scale note to it. So I'm going to play the chord progression with no changes, and then I'm going to add the changes so you can compare. And then again. Now here are the changes. So again, C minor and A flat with no changes. Now with the changes. And those changes are subtle, but to me they add a little bit more color, a little bit more continuity. And these are decisions that you can make, but knowing how these steps work puts you in control of those musical decisions. So now we're going to take the final step, which is to go beyond chords, and we're going to think about melodies. And what we're going to do is completely forget about playing chords from the right hand and just allow the chord progression to be covered by how I play the left hand. I'm just going to play the root and 5th of each chord in the left hand, and that's going to be enough to carry the sense of the chord progression. In the right hand, the only thing I'm going to do are play the 1st and 5th scale notes. And I can play them in different octaves. I can play them in combinations. Let's just see what happens. So I'm going to play the chord progression, root and 5th with my left hand, only 1st and 5th scale notes of the key in my right hand. Okay, so it's not the most exciting thing, but it doesn't sound bad. It's very simple, and sometimes that's just the thing that you need. For one, if you are singing, or if you're not really comfortable with the chords, or maybe there's another band member who is kind of in the spotlight at that point. Okay, and it also works good if you're playing in the background behind someone who's speaking. But let me play this with an accompaniment. You'll hear how it just kind of sets the keyboard into the texture of what's already going on. So again, very simple, but often it's a really effective technique. So now that's kind of also our first step into playing melodically, adding melodies to what we play and not just thinking chords. The next step is we're going to add just one more scale note, and now we're going to add the seventh. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The quicker way to get there is just to go down one from the top note. So now the three notes that we're going to work with in the right hand are the first, the fifth, and the seventh. E flat, B flat, and D. And again, I can play that in any octave. I can play them in combination. I can play them in octaves. Let's see what happens. So these last two steps are so simple that they feel like hacks, but they're not hacks. We've taken the steps to understand how music works, and knowing that unlocks so many of these things that we want to do. And it's cutting out all the complication, which I think is the goal. We just want to cut out everything that's complicated so we can be free to express ourselves as musicians. These two steps, identifying the key and the scale, are the beginning techniques that I teach in Fluent Piano. 3 video courses that show you how to play songs on the piano, first with chords, then expressing yourself through melodies. And then for those of you playing in a church setting, Fluent Piano Background will show you how to effectively and artfully set the right environment when you're playing behind someone who's speaking. So you can learn more about Fluent Piano at fluentpiano.com. I hope these steps were helpful to you. Check out those resources. You can get those at ourworshipsound.com/keyboard. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.